Hey, everybody. This is Dr. Jess and Paul. This is volume 2 of our weekly podcast, Solving the Health Puzzle. Why am I sick? The real reasons. Last week, Paul spoke about some of the real base reasons for becoming ill, and we're going to continue that this week. And let's go. Go for it, Paul.
Thanks, mate. Do you know what? I'm a bit concerned that you get on as Dr. Jess and I'm just Paul.
Well, what would you like to be?
Well, I need a doctor.
How would you like to be dressed? I don't like to say Mr. Paul, what can I say?
Somebody said to me once, if you had even more letters after your name, would it improve your business? And I said, well, I don't think so. He said, don't worry about it then. It's not important. I went, there you go. That's the way to be.
I understand, because I've got a ton of letters next to my name. And most of the time I just put, doctor, chiropractor, and registered nurse, and I'll just go like this.
So we're going to carry on from last week, because we were talking about beliefs and how beliefs drive behaviors, and then behaviors will produce an outcome, which generally, when we talk about health, is a symptom of some kind. So one of the most important things is what influences our beliefs. And this is one of the most important things for people to be aware of, because my belief is what influences our beliefs is absolutely unconscious. We are not purposefully making those beliefs so that they can serve us. And that's a really important point to take on board. So where do they come from? So when we're born, we have parental influence. So whatever our parents believe is right for us, that influences us. We have friends that we get at nursery at 2 years old, right? Who, when you come home from nursery and your parents say, where did you learn that from? And you're mimicking behaviors, and then that gives you a belief system, and so on and so forth. And people think, well, that's quite basic. It's not really influential on us. But long term, we put a lot of faith into what we learn from other children or other people in our peer group. No matter what age we're at, whether it's 3-year-old, 13, 30, we're always looking at, oh, that person does that. What can I learn from that? How can I mimic it? Where do I get that value out of it? We then have school, high school teachers, university, that kind of thing. And at the very same time, we get social media, marketing, TV, newspaper, radio adverts, whatever it is. All of that stuff is influencing our beliefs. And so if you're hearing and seeing a lot of information about you should have a 6-pack abs image, otherwise you're a failure, that becomes the most important thing to you. And then your behavior is based around, I must get that.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with health.
Right.
And by the way, until you were exposed to that information, it was not of interest to you. I didn't care that wasn't interesting to me. I was more interested in fishing, or I was more interested in what happens when steam comes off of heat and it gets distilled back down to pure water. I wasn't interested in that stuff. But now everyone's interested in it. Maybe I should be interested in it too. Let me read some of the information. And it's so compelling. And this is a very basic kind of example, but it's so compelling to us that we then get sucked into that. And then all of a sudden it's a belief that I must do that. Oh, let me start weighing and measuring my food because I need to get my body fat down to such and such.
It's very true. And it also determines how we become happy. We're being told how to be happy, how to be satisfied in this life. And it has nothing to do with the reality of being satisfied. We're just being told that this is the way you're going to feel good about yourself. And it's usually lining somebody's pocket, but we're getting the cues in the wrong way. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It is always lining someone's pocket. And therefore it becomes even more important for the people that are influencing people's behavior, because they're influencing their beliefs, for that message to be so compelling that it's unquestionable. And to do that, it needs to be in a huge percentage of a population. So if everybody between 18 and 33 or 34 is focusing on Instagram accounts, for example, that are just all about aesthetics, 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 or achievement in sport, whatever else it is, that is the thing. There is nothing else that's more important. If gaming is your thing, and that, you know, as a young person's pastime is a big, big thing, and your belief is that being better, getting through the game quicker, beating my friend online is like the most important thing in life. Subconsciously, this is not a conscious decision. You don't wake
That's
up one day and
true.
go, right,
That's true.
I want to be the master of the internet and kill everyone online. That's not how it works. But you get sucked into this thing, and then all of a sudden you're spending 6, 7, 8 hours a day in front of a PC with the belief that it's fine.
Right.
In fact, it's more than fine. It's raising my dopamine so much that without it, I find it very difficult not to, or very difficult to function healthily. So you pursue that endeavor. Going back to this six pack abs, aesthetics stuff. You know, you need to put yourself in that environment 24/7. You got to live, breathe, sleep, train, do everything purely focused on that. But here's where the reality emerges. You get the body that is supposedly the goal, and you are nothing but unhappy
True.
because you haven't eaten for months. Your hormones are all just terrible, you know, levels are all in the toilet. You've got very little friends outside of the business. In other words, you know, everyone is doing it, but no one outside is really integrating with you anymore because you're so focused on it. And all of the joy of life has gone. And you haven't had any of it for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is. It's the same with anything, right? So we get influenced in all sorts of areas. And I'm using aesthetics as one, but it's the same with everything.
It's true. It's true.
Then we get to a point later on in life where we've got these illnesses or disease symptoms, whatever you want to call them. And when we start looking back at what causes them from the belief level, we're seeing that all of those influences or the influencers pushed us in that direction. That's when it's important to find out what's most important to you about your health, what's most important to you about life, and then redesign the beliefs around those elements, not around what everybody else thinks should be important for you.
It is a difficult thing to do because of the influences that are around, and that we can be very, very lonely, especially during lockdown. There's talk about lockdown psychosis, and which is a very real thing. For those who would question what dopamine does, when Paul mentioned it, very, very quickly, without getting too technical, dopamine is your neurotransmitter of satiety. So when you have a nice meal and you feel really good, that's dopamine. When you start using your neurotransmitters too much, too often, imbalances are created. So for dopamine itself, if it becomes too high, you can get into psychosis, you can get into paranoia, or just excitation, OCD, and so forth. If it gets too low, you can have very, very major depression. This kind of stuff happens when what Paul says gets to its logical conclusion as you go along in your life. So what's happening with what Paul is saying has a direct influence on your actual physiology. It's not even theoretical anymore, people. Okay, it's scientifically proven. And what Paul is talking about is the actual basis, where it starts from, which also gives you a basis for where you can begin to heal yourself.
And this is something that people don't take into account, right? A lot of people look at an illness and go, that high cholesterol is the illness. No, that is the symptom that is the end result of all of these behaviors and all of these build-ups of different things that have gone on. Until those things are dealt with, we're never going to get to the bottom of this cholesterol issue unless you take the statins. And we know statin users have a higher rate of all-cause mortality
Yes.
than non-statin users because the underlying problems that were causing the high cholesterol were not addressed. Okay, all it was we took down the symptom. The symptom was high cholesterol, we got rid of that. But all of the things that were going on to cause the high cholesterol, all of the detrimental things going on in your body are still going on. So really big, important distinction to make for people.
That is absolutely true. We live in a society that treats symptoms, but doesn't treat the causes and the reality. And what is absolutely necessary, especially if you have anything long term, is you not only have to know the root causes. Okay, you have to know what all those downstream effects are, and you've got to treat both. And in a later podcast, I'll talk about cell danger response, just to let you know that it is in fact scientifically proven that toxins can hurt your cells, microbes, fungi, viruses, parasites, that is well known, but in equal measure, all the psychological, spiritual, and emotional insults that our bodies take for loads of different reasons can injure the cell just as seriously. And the base stuff that Paul just talked about, where our self-image is being shaped externally, is the basis of all of that.
100%. And when you've got that chronic stress about, oh, I need to lose some weight, or I need to be better at this, or I don't need people to see me like that, I need to hide that insecurity that I have, that's a chronic stress that elevates cortisol, it elevates problems within the cells,
Right.
mitochondrial dysfunction, the whole 9 yards. How you see yourself has a direct correlation to your health.
Absolutely. And
I spoke to somebody this morning, very quick story. I spoke to somebody this morning who said, oh, I don't think I'm stressed. I feel quite, and we could see on her bloods, there's a lot of stress going on.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I'm so stressed, but I do have a lot of things going on in my mind. And after a little bit of questioning, what we came to the conclusion was that the things that are going on in her mind constantly are based around presenting a good outward image to protect what she really feels inside, and letting people see that. In other words, low self-esteem,
the facade, yeah.
Wanting to control everything to make sure everybody sees her in a certain way, because that's how she wants to be seen.
That's the way she wants
there's a conflict with how she actually feels inside. And when you're doing that 24/7, you're going to suffer some stress.
Yes.
Okay. And your sleep isn't going to be that great, and your energy is not going to be that great, and you're going to wake up tired, and that's just one thing, though. It's not the thing. It's one of the contributory factors. So if you fix all the others, but you leave that one out, you're still going to have the problems. That's why looking at everything, like all of the contributory factors, is so important.
One of the reasons people were starting here is because the spiritual / psychological / emotional area is the area most ignored and most fobbed off as you can't handle your life. With any kind of emotional or mental aberrations, and they're not really even aberrations, it's just variants of normal life. We're not allowed to be depressed. We're not allowed to be manic. But what are we allowed to be? We're not allowed to be human anymore. That is all physiologically initiated. There is the common wisdom concerning any kind of emotional or mental or any kind of aberrations is that you're weak, you can't handle your life. Okay, you're a lesser person. That's where the stigma is. Okay, you're called a nutter, you're called a lot of things. And that's why people with true mental illness, which is still physiologically based, they suffer in silence. They are absolutely beaten up by the whole system, not only the medical system, but the opinion of everybody else in the world that, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and everything will be okay. And it's not like that.
A lot of that mental illness has been driven by these outside influences that they've had all their life.
Exactly.
That has brought them to this place that, I can't live up to those things that are expected of me. There was definitely a physiological issue with that as well. You get some neurotransmitter imbalances, and we get some yeast infections, and there are things that go on. And
what came first, the chicken or the egg? But it all comes together at the end, right?
That's why you have to do it all. Right? You can't just say, "Oh, that's what it was. It was that thing." Fix the yeast, you'll be fine.
Right.
Well, okay, but the behavior is still there because the beliefs are still there. So it's really important to understand that a lot of this is unconscious focus right? These are things that you're not conscious that you're doing. You know, Amazon sends you an email that says, oh, you had a look at this once. We've
Right.
got some ideas for you. Then you end up going, okay, that's interesting. Or maybe I do need one of those special hammers that can break through a window in the case of a fire. I never even thought about it before. And now you're the sort of person that owns that product. That
Mhm.
influences your beliefs about who you are. So not only is it the media and the information, but it's also your buying decisions that are influenced, that's creating you into these people for other people's benefit. Don't get me wrong, it's nothing wrong with having a hammer to get you out of a fire, but the fact of the matter is, it's pushed you in that direction without you consciously thinking about it. So you've got to be really careful in all those scenarios. Just for me, it's fascinating.
It is. If you watch your being online, you're going to find that things that you've bought, things that you've thought about, things that are related to what you bought are going to be popping up all the time. The logic in the bigger programs, and I don't pretend to understand it, is all set to do exactly that with you, to influence you. Okay, so it's fascinating that if we start looking at it from this level, okay, we can start making changes. So for today, Paul, what are the takeaway points?
Takeaway points. The biggest thing, just have a think about what influences your behavioral patterns the most. What influences you to stay up and watch Netflix? What influences you to, eat the food or drink the drink or whatever it is that you do in a good or bad way? Right? Why is it that you have got that tube of Pringles in the cupboard, even though you know there's no value to it? Whatever it is, think about it. What is it that's keeping me up at night or stopping me sleeping, whatever? Because once you realize that they've come from these places, then you've got the first step to being able to address it.
Exactly. And think of it this way a little bit, people. A lot of things have you by, like we would say in Brooklyn, have got you by the throat. Okay. And are influencing you and driving you. So maybe it's time to start turning things around little by little. It's important little by little, and getting control of it instead of it controlling you.
Or just being conscious of it, right? Doing a conscious focus of what I want to do. But this is only useful. This is only useful if you want to live a better, happier life.
And that's what exactly.
And if that's what you're after, then start
exactly. We're all looking for a better, happier, more prosperous life. Okay, prosperous doesn't have to be just financial, in emotionally, and self-fulfillment. Exactly. Thank you for the word that I was eventually going to get to because I couldn't think of it at the moment. People, listen, we're going to be doing this every Friday. We're going to be following along certain trends. Here's what I'm going to ask of everybody. First of all, tell your friends, please, because nobody else is talking about this stuff but Paul and I. And Paul is an uber expert when it comes to coaching this kind of issues. And he's actually done a lot of this stuff with me. And, this is why I'm happy to be working with him. I'm actually very honored because he's really good at this stuff. He's super good at it. So here's what I ask. Please tell your friends. And I'd like you to at least be, because I'm sure that not every podcast is going to be, to everybody's liking, but maybe stick with us for about 8 to 12 weeks, 8 to 12 sessions, and, watch the trend go along. Okay. Start learning a little bit, because we're going to do this in bite-sized pieces. Okay. So one podcast is not going to be too overwhelming, and one podcast is not going to give you the whole picture. This is something that has to be done piece by piece. And our real goal is to let you know what creates illness. And it starts right here. Okay. Right where Paul started, right at the emotion level. Okay. Right at the unconscious level, what you're taking in. And throughout time, you're going to get suggestions on how to turn things around, or just being mindful of it. And I'll bring some of the science and physiology, and you'll see how this is all going to come together over time. But maybe commit to about 8 to 12 weeks. This way, you'll get the trend. Don't be afraid to write emails to us, or at least, and give us some suggestions of what you'd like to hear or ask questions, stuff like that, because we want to see how this, we want to serve you. We're not selling anything. Okay. There's no products that we're going to say, buy this. Okay. Or this product's going to make you happy. No, we're doing this because we want to see people start getting control over their lives.
And if you've got questions, send them in. let's have a chat. Let's answer specific questions.
Mhm.
Quite happy to do that. We'll do our best to do it. So
Yeah, and sometimes, if something becomes a trend, we'll answer it within the podcast itself.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Thanks, Paul. Catch up with you
My
later,
pleasure.
people. All right.